Hey guys, so for today's video I'm going to be painting Hello Kitty, and for the base of these nails I'm just going to paint them with this really pretty silver hollow polish that I have from Ball Pit. It's called Secret Ingredient. I didn't want to just leave the backgrounds of the nails be like a plain solid color, but also I didn't really want the background to, I guess, take away too much from Hello Kitty herself. Because I'm only going to be painting Hello Kitty on one nail and I don't do like anything else on any of the other nails. So I did kind of want like the nails to be a little more exciting to look at instead of just being so plain. So that's kind of why I just went with this. I felt like silver with the hollow would just make a really nice background for Hello Kitty and also add to the other nails that aren't going to have anything on them. I do 2 coats of this and I cure each coat for 60 seconds. And even when applying a second coat, like as you can see here with the first coat, it's not like super, it is pretty packed in there, but it's not so packed, like the glitter's not so packed that you can't see through the nail. You can definitely see through and tell that the nail itself is still clear. And even with doing a second coat there, you can still kind of see and tell that the nail itself is clear. To get around that, you could, probably add like a third, maybe even a fourth coat. I don't know. I've only ever done 2 coats for this, so I don't know what like a third or a fourth coat would look like, and if it would make it look more like the glitter more dense and packed onto the nail. But I imagine adding, a third coat would make it look more full of glitter and maybe less clear. You could also try the sponging method, but if you are going to do that on an actual person, whether it be yourself or someone else, you got to make sure you're extra careful around the sidewalls and like the cuticle area of the nail, so you're not getting gel polish all over the skin. Or you could add a base color first, so whatever color you want to add, white, black, green, blue, purple, yellow, whatever color you want, and then put this on top. That would be really pretty too. It would also, kind of give a different effect of the hollow. If you put it on black, that hollow is going to pop so much. But anyhow, like I said, I really like how it looks on its own, and that was really the effect that I wanted for this set. So I just did 2 coats of this and left it like that. And then, as you saw a couple seconds ago, I did wipe this nail off with some alcohol to remove that sticky layer. I always say whenever you're going in with nail art to remove that sticky layer, because it does tend to make the polish that you put on top kind of spread out a little bit and can distort your lines or make them kind of have like a blooming effect a little bit. Not to the same extent as a blooming gel would, but enough to where like if you were to do a straight line going down the nail, you are going to see a little bit of expansion on that line there, and it's not going to be that like nice crisp clean line that you originally did. You could also apply a matte top coat. I've seen lots of people do that where they apply a matte top coat and do their nail art on top. I don't do that because that's just adding another layer onto the nail, and that could potentially end up bulking up the nail depending on how many layers you do and like what you're doing nail art wise and all of that. So I personally don't like to do the matte top coat method for doing nail art. I just wipe that sticky layer off and I'm good to go. So for painting on Hello Kitty, I usually use my ball pit sketching gel to draw out or sketch out the outline of any character that I do, because that always ends up working out a lot better for me, and like making sure that my proportions are correct and everything's like placed right. I've mentioned before in these character nail art videos that I do tend to struggle a bit with like proportions and making sure the placement is right for like facial features and like different details and stuff. So I don't usually do the color blocking method, but I was like, Hello Kitty is a simple enough character. I feel like I could do the color blocking method and get away with it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm using the white from Ball Pit. I think I might have mentioned that already. But I'm using the white from Ball Pit to do this, to get the basic shape of her and on and everything. And I'm just going in. I started out with her head, which Hello Kitty has a big head. I mean, I've known that she has a big head, but I didn't realize how big it was until I was actually painting her on. But anyhow, I started out with her head, added on her little ears, then I did her body, moved down to her feet, and then to her arms and hands. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward on like the shapes of her. And that's another thing, like if you are doing character nail art and you're finding it a little bit difficult, you can just break down the characters into different shapes. So like with their head, it's that big kind of oval-y shape there, so I started out with that. And then the ears are little triangles, so I did that. Her body is also kind of like a triangle shape, or I guess more, what is it, a trapezoid or something? It looks like a triangle without the point, like the point's cut off. I'm pretty sure that's a trapezoid. I don't know. Anyhow, so I did that, and then her feet are kind of like this hot dog kind of shape, or like an oval with like the top half cut off down there, and then her arms are also little triangles and stuff. So you can break down the character into shapes if that makes it easier for you. I find it easier to do that when doing the color blocking method, whereas whenever I'm just doing, like whenever I sketch out the outline first, I just kind of go for it. I don't break it down or anything. Like I'm just doing the entire outline, if that makes any sense. But like I said, for the color blocking method, I feel like breaking it down into shapes and doing each shape individually really helps and makes it a little bit easier to do character art this way. And as you can see, I am just going in and laying down this white for her entire body first. And I'm not flash curing in between doing anything, because like I said, I do have issues sometimes with like proportions and spacing and all of that. And I don't want to like have done her head and flash cure that and then have that be stuck on there and then move on to her body and like the proportions aren't right there, and I would have to file off the head part potentially, and that's just a lot of work, I feel like, for me. So to prevent me from doing that and making it easier for myself, I don't flash cure. Even whenever I'm doing like the outline first instead of doing the color blocking, I don't flash cure my outline at all, so that way I can just wipe off whatever needs to be wiped off and redo it, instead of potentially having to come in later and file it off. Like I said, it's easier for me that way, but if for you it's easier for you to like flash cure stuff in between because you're afraid that you'll mess something up. Once you get it how you like it, you can go ahead and flash cure. Now I'm just taking these colors here. I think that was Queen of Hearts. That was It's Me from Nails by Dev. And then I have Mimosa. And I think the next one here is Neon Honey. Yep, Neon Honey from Madam Glam. Because I wanted her bow and outfit to be glittery as well. So that's why I'm using the Queen of Hearts and It's a Me, because that's a glittery red and blue. And then for the yellow, I'm going to put down the Mimosa first because that Neon Honey is a pretty sheer color. So I wanted the plain solid yellow to go down first and then put that glitter yellow on top, so that way the yellow color pops through and you're not seeing the white underneath of it, you're just seeing the yellow. And again, I'm just doing the color blocking method for this, and I'm just going in doing her bow, again breaking it down into shapes because it makes it a little bit easier. So I started out with the circle in the middle of her bow and then did the little like rounded out kind of triangle-y shapes for the two ends of her bows. And for all of these colors, the white, the red that I'm using, the blue, and the yellow, I only did one coat of everything. The white gel polish from Ball Pit is a super pigmented gel polish, so it's one coat coverage whether you are doing nail art with it or painting your entire nails with it. Although I will say, if you are painting your entire nails with it, I do recommend doing 2 coats, but I always recommend doing 2 coats if you're just painting a nail a solid color, to make sure everything is completely covered, you're not missing any spots. And sometimes when you drag the polish down the nail, it can tend to get a little thin in certain spots depending on how much pressure you put or how much polish you drag down the nail. So I always do recommend doing a second coat, but with doing nail art, you really don't have to do a second coat. Depending on what color is underneath, you might have to do a second coat, or like what color you're doing your nail art with, you might have to do a second coat. But with this white from Ball Pit, you definitely don't have to do a second coat. As you can see here with the shape here of Hello Kitty on top of that glitter background, definitely didn't need a second coat. And then because I am doing the red and the blue and the yellow on top of that white, I also don't need a second coat. I feel like probably if I would have done the outline first and then filled that in with the colors afterwards and just do the red, yellow, and blue on top of that glitter base, I would probably have to do 2 coats of them. Maybe not the red and the blue, but definitely this yellow, like the mimosa color, I definitely would have. Even though mimosa is a pretty pigmented color and you can get away with doing 1 coat on it if you're just painting your nail or doing certain nail art, I just feel like it wouldn't have been opaque enough to cover up this hollow glitter background. So I might have had to do a second coat on those if I was doing them straight on that background, but because I am, like I said, because I am doing them over the white, I really don't need to do 2 coats of them. I only did 1 coat, and I did flash cure in between each color for these. So when I got the bow on, I flash cured that. When I got the yellow on, I flash cured that, and then after I get this blue on, I do flash cure that. And then once I got Hello Kitty completely finished at the end, I did do a full 60-second cure to make sure that she was completely cured. But in between painting the different colors, I am just doing quick little flash cures just so that it stays in place and like the colors don't bleed into each other. But again, I'm just kind of filling in those spaces, doing the shapes, breaking it down. So for the little yellow shirt underneath her overalls or dress or whatever this is, I just did that kind of like half circle U shape for the like collar part, and then the sleeves are little triangles that go on her arms, and then whatever shape this dress overall situation is here, I did that, filled all that in. And at this point I was feeling really happy with, oh, I did have to clean up a little bit of the blue, so I'm just using the cleanup brush that's on the other side of this ball pit brush. The ball pit brushes are double-ended. One side is a cleanup brush and the other side is whatever size liner brush you're doing or using. In this case, I'm using a 9mm liner brush. 9mm liner brushes are kind of what I usually go for whenever I'm doing nail art. It does kind of depend on like the length of like the lines or like what I'm doing. So I usually do stick with a 9mm, and then when I do outlining I will tend to switch to a 12mm, but again that kind of just depends on like the size of the nail art that I'm doing. But anyhow, like I was saying, I was feeling really confident in how she was turning out at this point. I was like, she's looking really good. I feel like the proportions are really good. She's not looking funky or anything. After I got that blue on, I did go back in with that Neon Honey there and just went over that yellow to add that glitter. But anyhow, yeah, I was feeling really good about it. I'm like, this is going really well. Usually doing character art like this doesn't turn out very well for me, and I do have to do the outline to make sure everything looks good. So I was feeling really happy with this. I'm like, this is gonna be really well. I'm not gonna have to redo anything. Added on her little nose. Everything's going well. After I get the nose on, I flash cured that, and then I grab out, I think I used the black from Ball Pit to do her eyes here. And once I got the eyes on, she was looking a little weird. Usually this is the point also where I kind of start realizing like something's off, is when I start adding on the little details like the facial features or the hair and stuff, and I'm like, something is not right here, like she's not looking good. But then I'm like, maybe it's just because she's not outlined, and once I add the outline on she'll look a little better. So I grabbed out my emo black liner gel from Ball Pit, which this is a it does cure without a no wipe top coat, a no wipe top coat. What am I saying? It cures without a sticky layer, so you can do this with chrome or whatever, or you can like sometimes people will top coat the nails before doing any outlining to make sure that the nail is nice and smooth. So you could top coat the nails and then put this on and then cure it and not have to do another top coat if you didn't want to. Or like I said, you can use it for chrome. If you are using it for chrome, you do only have to cure it for about 15 seconds, otherwise the chrome's not going to stick. But anyhow, using this outlining, and I am using a 12mm liner brush to do the outlining here. It just is a little more stable and isn't as shaky, or it like absorbs kind of the shakiness if you're a little bit shaky when doing like your outline and whatever. It's also super easy to get super thin lines because of the length of the brush. You can kind of just use the tip there and not have a whole lot of pressure on it. So it does make it a little easier for line control, which is also another thing that I'm working on, because if you really look closely at my outlines, you can see like the unevenness of the thickness of lines. But anyhow, going through outlining her, and she's just not looking right to me. I'm like, she's a little off. Like, you can tell it's Hello Kitty, but she kind of looks like the Temu version of Hello Kitty, or like, you know, the street performers in like New York or Vegas or something like that, or, you know, you see the characters at birthday parties and stuff, and they just look like, you can tell who they're supposed to be, but they don't look quite right because, like, it's not a licensed costume or whatever. But anyhow, that's what she was looking like. And I'm like, I am not liking how she's looking. I think I went through and outlined her all the way. I don't think I added her whiskers onto this, because by that point I was like, she doesn't look right and I need to redo her. But anyhow, I outlined her and cured that outline for a full 60 seconds. And yeah, once I got that outline done and I was sitting there staring at her, I was like, this does not look right, and I know I can do better. So I did end up redoing her, because like I said, I was not liking how she was looking, and she honestly really didn't take me that long to do, and I had the time to redo her. If I didn't have the time to redo her, then she would have just stayed looking like this and she would have looked just a little off. But yeah, I did redo her, and I did switch over to doing my usual method, which is doing the outline first, because like I stated multiple times now and in previous videos, that just works out a little better for me, because I can actually see where everything is laid out and make sure that the spacing is right before curing it, and just making sure that everything is where it needs to be and is the size that it needs to be and in the places that it needs to be, instead of, like, I feel like the color blocking method, you're just kind of guessing a little bit on where things need to be and how they need to be spaced and the size that they need to be, and hoping that it all comes together in the end, where I feel like when you do the outline, you're not guessing. You're laying it all out to see how it looks and make sure that it looks right before adding in the color. Kind of like a coloring book almost, you know, you have the outline there, you can see the picture, you can see how it looks, and then you can go in with the color and, like, you know, deal with the color later and figure out that. But with color blocking, you're just throwing the color on. It's like if you were to have, you know, a blank coloring book and they say, you know, color a dinosaur or something, and you're just going off of memory or whatever. Like, that's kind of what I feel like. I mean, I'm not going off of memory with this, because I am looking at a reference picture, but that's just kind of how I feel whenever I'm doing color blocking. Like, I feel like even though I am looking at a reference picture and I can see it here, I just kind of feel like I'm almost doing it from memory, even though I'm not. But anyhow, I took out my sketching gel from Ball Pit, which is just like this jelly brown color here. It's really nice because you can't see it through like any of the colors that you go over with, because it is this jelly brown. You can use, you know, like a white gel polish to do your sketch, or you could use a black gel polish and like do really light lines for that, or you can take the black, mix it in with a top coat, or use a sheer black polish, and do the outline with that, just to make it a little more sheer, because black lines, like, you typically usually can almost always see black through, like, depending on the pigment or the opaqueness of the black line, you can see it through, like, whatever color you put on top. So that's why I probably recommend like shearing it out a little bit, or using a sheer black for the outline instead of doing like a solid black. But you use whatever you have, or whatever you're comfortable with doing. But yeah, I'm just going in and fixing her up. I completely restarted. Like, I threw out that other nail. I wasn't gonna try and file off that entire Hello Kitty, because I'd probably end up filing into the glitter background there. So I just grabbed out a whole new nail tip and repainted that with that silver hollow polish, and then came in with my sketching gel here and redid her. And this definitely, I will show in the end like the difference, but this second time definitely ended up looking a lot better. I think partially because I did do the outline first, and I can, you know, get it all placed where it needs to be placed with the outline, but also because this is my second time now painting Hello Kitty on a nail. So I kind of know like the layout of her and like the shape of her body and everything. So it made it a little bit easier to paint her this second time, and for her to end up looking a little bit better this second time. I will say I don't show myself doing any of the color on her on this time around. I just show me doing the outline, because the color, adding the red and the yellow and the blue onto her and the white, it's all in the same spot, same kind of way I did it. I did lay down the white first again, same reason why I went over with the white the first time that I painted her on. I laid that white down, that way I wouldn't have to do multiple coats of the other colors. But yeah, so I'm just showing you how I do the outline. I basically do the outline in the same kind of way that I did the color blocking. I did break her down into shapes again, because I just felt like looking at Hello Kitty, you wouldn't think she would be super complicated to do, because she is a very like simple character. But it's almost like the more simple characters are harder to get done and to like make them actually look the way that they're supposed to be, because they are so simple, and you have to make sure that like everything is in the right space, everything is proportioned out correctly, the right shape, in the right spots. Otherwise they are going to look just slightly off. Whereas I feel like the more complicated characters, you can kind of get away with a little bit on having... Can you hear my cat? She's in the other room. She's just yelling. I don't know what she's yelling about. Probably because she's out there alone. Anyhow. What was I saying? You can kind of get away a little bit with like the proportions being a little bit off, or like something being a little bit too far to the right or too far, you know, to the left, and it look fine. Whereas these simple characters, like, there's no forgiveness, I feel like. So these simple characters are a little more tricky, I'm realizing, doing this like character nail art series that I'm doing here. But as you can see here on this second time around, she does look a little better. She still looks a teeny tiny bit off, but she definitely looks a lot better than that first time. She looks more sorry. She looks more close to how she's supposed to look versus that first time around. And then I am just taking my shiny top coat from LGN and top coating all of the nails with this, and then once that's on, I do go ahead and cure for a full 60 seconds. And this is the finished result. This set is so cute. It is pretty simple when it comes to like nail art. I mean, I know Hello Kitty herself isn't like a simple design to do, but like there's not a whole lot going on the nails. It's just her as the main focus and some really cute glitter nails, which wait till you see these nails in the flash. They are so pretty. But anyhow, here's the comparison between the first Hello Kitty that I did and the second Hello Kitty that I did. The second one definitely came out a lot better in my opinion. I do feel like her ears are still a little off. Like I didn't get the ears quite right, but that's okay. You can still tell she's Hello Kitty. I think they're a little too tall. They need to be shorter and wider. Kind of looks like a bunny. But anyhow, seeing those two next to each other, see, isn't this so pretty under the flash? So pretty. Looks like diamonds or like crushed diamonds. Anyhow, seeing those two next to each other just goes to show you that practice really does pay off. And also doing different techniques can help you improve your nail art. Like for me, you know, the color blocking just doesn't really work out for me. So I do the outline, whereas color blocking works for a lot of other people. It just doesn't work out for me. So if you are struggling with nail art, try some different techniques to see what works out for you. Also, practice. A lot of practice is really going to help you out. The more you do it, the better you're gonna get. Also, like I said, try some different techniques. Maybe what you're trying out just isn't what is best for you. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.